Welcome back, everybody. Glad you're here. Our next guest just arrived in Pittsburgh for the final 4 days of the Home and Garden Show.
That's right. He is the renegade gardener, also known as Don Engebretson, and he's a very popular stage show here at the David Lawrence Convention Center. You've been here for years. Thanks for coming back.
You started the party without me this year, but I'm excited to be here. I'll be speaking, of course, starting today and then right through the show. Close on Sunday.
Wonderful. And one of your topics is container gardening. Why did you want to touch on containers?
Well, first of all, gardening is back. Great news. 2016 reports just came in, and gardening expenditures bumped up after several years of decline. One of the things is millennials. Millennials are discovering gardening. Interesting with that group, they're eschewing the traditional home purchase with a yard, not interested in the time and the lawn and the trees, but they're heavily into, of course, condo, townhome, so they have limited space, patios, decks, and they want a garden. So we're going to be talking about some container ideas for them.
Now, do they want a garden with edibles in it or just...
Edibles are big.
Okay.
And I brought a big pot because if they are interested, or anyone, retirees are doing the same thing.
Yeah,
they're buying So limited space. If you want to grow the #1 edible that Americans have grown for years and years. Tomatoes, absolutely. Interestingly, not the #1 vegetable.
Beets?
Peppers. Tomatoes are a fruit. That was a trick.
That was a trick.
Tomatoes.
That's right.
Here is the this is what you're looking for,
You're supposed to remind me of
patio owners. This is what you're looking for. This is the classic. They're not very expensive, but this is the perfect size container for 1 tomato bush. I'll see people, they want to grow tomatoes on a deck, and they'll go too small. This is the size. A single plant, if you have 3 of these, think how little space 3 of these would take up. You would have tomatoes, you'd be giving them to neighbors.
Is that because the roots need to get really big?
It's going to fill that entire pot with its root structure. Another thing that people should think about if they're in limited space is going up, hanging baskets. Typically, you'll see these condo developments. You've got a deck. There's a deck above you, a deck above you. Think about hanging baskets. And I just brought along the nice folks at Proven Winners. Again, have supported me. They've shipped in a ton of cool blooming flowers, a lot of perennials, grasses. And I just wanted to show you this. This is Royal Velvet. This is one of the new Super Tunias. And this is for Super Tunias. These are an improvement on the wave style. These are disease resistant, heavy bloom, and of course they grow up and then trail down. These are those fabulous, and they'll come down 2 and even 3 feet on the hanging basket.
And explain to me watering these things. I mean, when you water, doesn't the water drip out of the bottom?
Absolutely.
Into what?
Right onto the old patio floor, and it'll dry up. You want to grow them in full sun. You want to fertilize every couple of weeks. You also want to trim them as they start to trail down. Mid-season, give them a haircut. Cut them back up to the bottom of the container so that they will regenerate, and that's going to give you longer bloom.
Now, what's all this stuff for?
Okay, everything we use in a container to grow our vegetables, our beautiful, colorful annuals, must have a drainage hole or holes. How many of you and your viewers are going to raise their hands? They've heard the age-old advice, you see the hole, as your container gets larger, the hole gets larger. Obviously, you need to cover it with something. Because you're going to grow your growing mix, start watering it, and initially what will happen is the soil will wash out the hole. So the age-old advice is you take the broken shards of an old clay pot, and you cover the bowl, right?
I've heard that.
Everyone's heard that. You know where that advice comes from?
No.
The 15th century. That's
before they had coffee filters.
Before the advent of coffee filters, flexible plastic screening that you
put
can
in the
buy.
bottom.
You can cut it with. Yeah, when I started out 30 years ago, I bought a cheap clay pot and broke it because I didn't have the clay. No. Couple of coffee filters, this kind of stuff. A lot of fun stuff we're going to be showing them.
And you're good to go. Thank you so much. All right, and before we forget, you're also doing top 10 garden blunders. Give us one.
People are afraid to tear out an old shrub. Folks, just because the thing came with the joint doesn't mean it has to stay in the landscape.
Great advice.
Tear out old shrubs, replace them.
All right, look for the Renegade Gardener here at the Home and Garden Show. He is doing demos on cool and creative containers and top gardening blenders. His stage is in the lower level garden pavilion area, and you can see the show times on your screen.